I, Philip Joseph Pierre.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. Spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the Privileges Committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective? In
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. The late start of the broadcast. Welcome to another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television with me, Timothy Paulion. We go up until maybe 10 o'clock, maybe a little after 10 o'clock, and I'll be having a special program this evening as we continue to focus on a new development pertaining to the Citizenship by Investment program, which has been under immense scrutiny on the island over several months. And my guest this evening is former St. Lucia Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition, Mr. Alan Chastanet. Welcome to the program, sir.
Great to be here, Tim.
And of course, the new development I'm talking about, well, you are privy to it, and that is the report which was delivered in Parliament by the Minister with responsibility for the CIP, and that is Dr. Ernest Hilaire. He did so via a minister's statement, and we'll just briefly play you a part of that statement which was delivered in Parliament, what we consider to be the salient points that were made in that address.
In my address of June 12, 2024, I provided details of the number of applications received and approvals given, and indicated how many were real estate approvals for Galaxy. Mr. Speaker, I wish to provide an update on these figures. From 1st of August 2021 to 30th August 2024, we have granted 2,873 approvals, of which 1,970 or 69% were real estate for Galaxy. Let me repeat it, Mr. Speaker, because people will say how many, that 14,000 applications have been given and multiplied. From 1st of August 2021, a few days after we came into office, to 30th August 2024, we have granted 2,873 approvals. 2,873 approvals, of which 1,970 or 69% were real estate for Galaxy. So Galaxy has only received 1,970 approvals since we came into office. Contrary to what you have heard in publicized interviews and repeated by the member for Miku South and the UWP, St. Lucia has never approved 14,000 applications. I want to repeat, St. Lucia has never approved 14,000 applications, and there is no $1.4 billion. We have only approved over 1,970 real estate applications for Galaxy. I must also categorically state that contrary to what has been said, Galaxy has never collected $1.2 billion.
One of the salient part of that statement that was issued yesterday during a sitting of the House of Assembly by the CIP Minister, Dr. Ernest Hilaire. At the time, he was delivering the annual report for the CIP for the period 2022 to 2023. Again, welcome to the broadcast, Mr. Alan Chastanet.
Great to be here.
The minister basically has denied a lot of what you have been saying, the Opposition United Workers' Party, in terms of the monies that would have been generated and collected by Galaxy. It has been said over $1 billion. And, for example, it has been stated that there are 14,000 passports sold or number of shares allocated to Galaxy, and all this is being denied by the CIP minister. What say you to this?
Well, I didn't hear him deny it, Tim, to be honest with you. I heard him say that as of August of this year, that they had approved 1,970 files for Galaxy. But the question that's been asked of him repeatedly is, what is the allocation of files? How many files was Galaxy given permission to sell? So we know that when we were in office and the hotel project was going to cost about $310 million US to build the hotel, that we had allocated 700 files. And before we left office, they had sold 38 of those files. But they were only allowed to sell 700. When you multiply 700 times the 300,000, because the amount that they were allowed to sell it for was a minimum of 300,000, that means that they were given permission to use $210 million US from our CIP program to specifically build the hotel. We have asked the minister. In December of 2022, the government changed the price from $300,000 to $200,000. We now see in the report that he provided that there was a significant increase in the number of applications by Galaxy between January of 2023 and March of 2023. So the price changed, remember, December 2022, immediately we saw almost 700 applications go in for Galaxy during that first quarter. So clearly, given that it's 1,900 that have been approved so far, that's well beyond the 700. So let's calculate that. 1,970 is about 380 million US dollars. Just over $1 billion EC dollars is what's already been sold. So this is the semantics.
But he said that Galaxy has never collected $1.2 billion.
But the question is, have they given them permission? Have they given an allocation of 6,000 files? So if you were giving an allocation of 6,000 files, it means that you're going to allow them to earn up to $1.2 billion. That's the important question. That's the important question. So here it is, he's wasted everybody's time. And in essence, what he's, in my mind, has confirmed is that it is 6,000 files. Now, I think that that's going to be a very difficult thing for the government to justify. So remember, he tried to justify it in his speech. He tried to say that there was an increase of cost. There were supply chain issues. He said that the size of the hotel was being expanded, but he never gave us a number. So if the hotel was going to cost $310 million before, and remember we were giving them 700 files at $210 million, if the price of the hotel has gone up, how much is the price of the hotel now? And how many files have you given them? So has the price of the hotel gone up to $1 billion? Is it gone up to $800 million? How come the minister has taken all this time and doesn't think that that information is relevant to the people of St. Lucia?
I think what people are wondering, people are watching this broadcast right now, they are wondering, is how do we get to the bottom of this particular issue? Because I think the more we hear statements from the minister, the more we hear from the opposition, and I think it's the more people are just confused.
I think there's two answers to that question, Tim. I think we all have to ask ourselves individually that we are in a democracy. The government officials there are there to serve us, and they ought to be accountable. So, public servants, a good one is the CEO of the CIP unit. Is he there working for the ministers, or is he supposed to be working for the state? And therefore, if we make a request of him of that information, ought he not to answer? The chairman of the board, but we sadly don't know who the chairman of the board is. right? But the chairman of the board and the board, should they be obligated to have provided that information? In fact, there's supposed to be a report that on an annual basis that would give us some insight into that information. But here it is that we've received a report 2 days ago, and I want to say that that report is a year and a half old. That report was for April of 2022 until March of 2023. We're in October of 2024. That's 18 months ago. The report, and so they broke the law. They broke their own mandate and their own act. The report between April of 2023 and March of 2024 is already now 6 months overdue. Now, they should have produced it within 3 months. They can get an extension of another 3 months. So it means it's due right now. And even if we were to get that report, remember, Tim, that report would have only been up until March of 2023. I'm sorry, March of 2024, which means we still have a long, almost 6 months, which would have been unaccounted for. The second way, so I think that citizens should be writing, citizens should be coming to Parliament, citizens maybe should go to the CIP unit and demand, because if in fact that the government is not doing it on their own, pressure should be brought.
But what should be the responsibility and the role of the opposition in this particular case? Because you're supposed to be the opposition providing some kind of safeguard, representing the interests of the people in this particular regard. Shouldn't you take some of the responsibility, some of the blame as well, for maybe being, as an opposition, being too lackadaisical as far as this is concerned?
I've heard that. I've heard some people make that allegation, and I keep saying, the leader of the opposition provides an opposing view. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the leader of the opposition that authority. What am I supposed to do? I mean, can I prevent anything from taking place as the leader of the opposition? The answer is no. Even though I am part of the of governance, I don't really have that kind of authority in the system. That's not to say I complain. But as the political leader of the United Workers' Party, we have been bringing these issues to light. We've been putting pressure on, and I want to say that very shortly, I will be filing a case in court for a judicial review, but also I'll be demanding for an injunction. Because if we just going to ask for judicial review, it means it's business as usual until the case is heard. I mean, I have a case that I filed in 2018, Tim. Then I'm going to go to court for case management in December. Okay? I have cases that have been thwarted in the court because a judge accused the government of political interference. And he dared to do that. And he was transferred. And as a result of it, he recused himself from my cases, and no judge has been appointed. It should not be my voice alone that finds that objectionable, finds that unacceptable, finds that a breach in our democracy. You would have expected civil society and other entities to have brought their voices, regardless of whether they support United Workers' Party.
But is it your responsibility to mobilize the people in a particular direction, Mr. Shastri?
To some extent.
Because you have well-known political figures in the historical context of St. Lucia, the likes of a Peter Josie, the likes of a George Odlum. They were known as mobilizers in terms of providing leadership and guidance, where they believe that a government would have been basically violating certain rules and regulations, and also trampling upon the rights of the citizens. They would be leading from the front on issues of that nature.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that we have to appreciate that this issue has evolved, and certainly the comments that we may have made early when we saw this thing the transgressions taking place, people initially said that this was politically motivated. And you have to hand it to the government. They've done a great job of saying to people, we're enemies of the state, we don't want to see progress from taking place, and running away from being accountable, answering the basic questions. So we will be taking them to court. You also have the court case with MSR in the U.S. courts. My understanding is that all of the defendants in the case have come together. I think that Hilaire made mention of that, and that November 22nd, I think it is when...
Isn't it November the 1st, I think?
No, I think it's November.
It has changed now?
I think it's the 22nd.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But sometime in November, they're going to be filing. My understanding is that at that point, MSR will be refiling and including Hilaire and some other persons to be defendants, raising the bar on them. I know that the government has been attempting to use the immunity to say that both Hilaire as well as Claude Emmanuel ought not to be included. So that's a different case altogether. But we will be filing our case very shortly. We believe that the infrastructure program has no legal basis. And we also believe that there has been underselling in the real estate program. So we'll present that case, but I think that what's very important is that we are able to get an injunction. So the goal is to prevent the Minister of Citizenship from signing any more certificates pending the outcome of the case. I would have hoped by now the special prosecutor would have seen enough things at this point to himself to have carried out an investigation, and maybe he is, I don't know. You also have the Auditor General, because the semantics of all this is many people I speak to don't understand that the audit that was presented was only on the operations of the CIP unit. And I know it's difficult for a lot of persons to really appreciate the difference there. This audit did not include an audit of the escrow account. And clearly the money that's coming in for the infrastructure program, because that money is being collected directly by Galaxy and directly by BMAX, what do you audit? We have no idea. The minister is saying on one hand that no applications have been received and no money has been received. How do we know that? Right? Because we saw in the group of files that was put out in the public domain from a particular law firm, 450 of them, all of them were for the infrastructure program. So why are people going through the process of applying for the infrastructure program if in fact what Galaxy and BMAX are supposed to have achieved already has not? So the whole thing becomes highly suspicious. But the reality is that the audit does not include the questions we're asking, and that's why the minister avoided, I think deliberately, answering some fundamental questions. If you knew for sure there was 6,000 files approved, meaning they're allocated, and so therefore at some point Galaxy would get approvals for 6,000 files, $1.2 billion. Wouldn't that make you suspicious? That's a very important piece of information. If in fact that there's $380 million that Galaxy has already collected because it was approved, how much money is in the escrow account? How much money has been drawn down on the escrow account to build the hotel? And I think that the minister really went out of his way to try to confuse people in already a very difficult situation for persons to understand. So when he says, oh, the money doesn't belong to us, right? The money belongs to Galaxy. Well, if that's the case, then why did we have an escrow account?
But let's play a clip of the minister, because the minister is also taking your administration to task when he said that Galaxy became an approved developer in 2019. That's during the reign of the United Workers' Party administration, and they agreed to construct the Canals project. But according to him, permission was given to them to basically have to own the resources that would have been raised as a result of the sale of those passports. And an extra escrow account would have been set up where they would have access to that money. Let's listen to Dr. Ernest Hilaire.
When Galaxy became an approved developer in St. Lucia in 2019, under the former administration, they agreed to construct the Canals project. An escrow agent was approved by the board on 21st August 2019, pursuant to approved guidelines for the establishment and maintenance of an irrevocable escrow account, which includes, among other things, the obligation to hold the proceeds of the said escrow account in trust for Galaxy. In trust for Galaxy. August 2019. In trust for Galaxy and the investor, that is the applicant for citizenship, pursuant to an escrow agreement approved by the board. The guidelines also provided for the escrow account to remit monthly bank statements of the revenue and expenditure of the escrow account to the unit. The escrow account does not hold the money in trust for the government of St. Lucia. It is not our money. It is Galaxy's money from the sale of shares in their development. The money is to be used for the construction of the resort and the developer's expenses. The guidelines expressly state that the escrow agent must hold the money for and on behalf of the developer and the investor, and shall release, transfer, or otherwise deal with the escrow funds solely as directed in accordance with the terms of the escrow agreement. The government of St. Lucia is not a party to the escrow agreement, as set up by the leader of the opposition when he was minister.
If all these things, how can you justify setting up, agreeing to that kind of arrangement?
The money goes into an escrow account. An escrow account is an established legal instrument. So it means that you have a third party that's holding the money. Okay? Who is investing into the escrow account? Are the persons who are buying the shares. So the hotel is not owned by, will not be owned by Galaxy. It'll be owned by all of the shareholders. The state has allowed Galaxy to sell our passports. Under what? Under the condition that the money is going to be used to build the hotel. That's why it goes into an escrow account. And there are rules in the escrow account as to giving us updates, which he said, on a monthly basis, the accounts are reconciled. How many applicants did you receive? How much money do you have? Okay? And it's to ensure that the monies are used for what was outlined in the escrow account, which is to build the hotel. So let me give you an example. You go to the bank to borrow money to build your house. Okay? The bank approves the loan. The bank then gets you to bring in a contractor. You have to get a bill of quantities, a quantity surveyor, so everything is done. When the project is starting, the contractor can apply for what's they call mobilization, about 10%. So he draws down on that money. The money doesn't go to you, Tim. Money goes to the contractor, who has a contract that the bank has looked at and approved. When the foundation is approved, they draw down more money. When the ceiling comes on, they draw down on more money. And that's to make sure that the project is completed. This is the same thing. That's what the escrow account was done. If in fact what the minister is trying to allege, that the money does not belong to the state, why did we go through the process of the escrow account?
Because based on your analogy there, when the project is completed, the home is completed, it belongs to me.
It does, but
yeah,
the loan that you got covers the cost of the house.
Yeah.
Now, if in fact that there is a mishap, there are supply chain issues, there's an increase in the cost, the contractor has to provide that information and bring it to the bank. So the bank either says, okay, we're going to cover the additional cost, or you have to find the difference. So if 1,900 files have been sold, we agree to that. $380 million, and you go to the site right now, some people would say that it's generous to say that $50 million US has been sent on the site. Let's give them an exaggerated amount, $100 million US. That means there should be $280 million in the escrow account. Did the minister tell you how much money is in the escrow account? Is he in a position to tell you how much is in the escrow account? He says he gets monthly updates, so he would know. If in fact the Galaxy is just withdrawing the money and you see that it's not going into the hotel, you have an obligation because you're the one who helped set up the escrow account. You can put a freeze on allowing them to sell any more passports unless there is proper accountability. So this is wrong to say the money doesn't belong to the state. The state has a contract with Galaxy. It says we will allow you to sell under our terms 700 files or shares. Okay? And the price, the minimum price is 300,000. So if you want to sell it for more, you can, but you're not allowed to sell it for less. The new government came in, decided to change it from 300,000 to 200,000. That's within their purview. They came to Parliament, they made the change. I have zero difficulties with that. I understand how the market is. But if you've done that now, how much is the hotel going to cost? How many files have you allocated? We need to know those things so we can determine for ourselves whether in fact everything is good. But the fact is the minister continues to run away from answering the questions that have been asked, and he only wants to answer the questions that he wants, and he's playing semantics. But already he's exposed himself, because we know that when we were in government we only gave them 700 files. We already know that they have 1,900 files that have been approved, $380 million US. We can see for ourselves that there's no way that $380 million US has been spent. And I want to say one more thing, Tim. That's very, very important. Because he says it repeatedly, that the CIP monies are there to benefit us. Correct? It's only Chinese workers. How's that benefiting us? Our passports are being used. They're collecting our money to apply it to it. Why in this guava season, especially in the South, and we saw that with the unemployment numbers, the numbers of people who are unemployed in the South has gone up. Why would you not make sure that there are local contractors there? My understanding right now is that Galaxy came on a site visit because they're trying to convince people that they can complete this project by next year. I don't see how that's going to happen. But now they want to bring 200 Chinese people. Who's giving them the work permits? Is the government giving them the work permits to do that? And there's only 2 solutions who are working on the site, and both of them are working as security guards. So is it fair to say that we're benefiting? We've not seen the hotel being built. There are no St. Lucians being employed. There were 2 or 3 St. Lucian contractors. They've all gone for a long time, all complaining about the slow payment, the slow pace of work. Our mangrove, which is sacred, and all efforts were made to make sure that when the plans were being approved, that the mangrove was protected. The mangrove has been destroyed. So where is it that St. Lucia is benefiting in this deal? And instead of comforting us and providing us with the details that we've been asking for, the minister is skirting all over the place. He's weaving and bobbing all over the place and refuses to answer the basic questions.
So in light of all the confusion, Mr. Shastny, and the fact that EU are threatening to take legal action, what do you think long-term will happen for the Citizenship by Investment program in terms of its reputation and all the negative attention that it is getting?
I think that the current crop of leaders in the OACS running CIP programs have been all disingenuous. And as a result of it, pressure was put on all of them to sign this MOA. I think that they've all not taken it seriously. So, for instance, when I hear that there's going to be a regulatory authority, we all get excited. there's going to be a regional regulatory authority to provide regulations over this. And then we find out that St. Lucia's appointment to that regulatory is Mr. Jean-Marie, who is what? The chairman of the Bank of St. Lucia and the best friend of Philip Pierre. So what, he's going to regulate himself? The governor of the central bank was here and said, they asked him a question about the underselling. He says, no, that's for law enforcement. That's not something that the regulatory agent is going to get involved in. That's problematic. We see the issues that are taking place in the banking regime. TD Bank. You know, when the Bank of St. Lucia wants to lie to us, because that was a blatant lie, to come in and say, oh, TD Bank never left because of CIP. Well, TD Bank is not going to tell them they're leaving for CIP. The question is, has TD Bank left? And we see that throughout the OECS, several banks, our correspondent banks, are leaving.
But it might not be primarily because of problems with the citizenship by investment program, because we all know that long before those issues surfaced with regard to the CIP, that those banks have been under the radar, and they have been very fearful of the risks involved and the various penalties that could be imposed on them. And we have the respondent banks.
Correspondent banks?
No, we have the correspondent banks, and then our banks would be the respondent banks. They themselves, they find themselves in a dilemma, and it's long before the and banks have been leaving the region as well, not operating in the region because of that same issue.
So time is short. I don't want to really get into a long discussion about that, but I just want to say to you that that's not necessarily true. The whole correspondent banking situation came about because of what happened in 2008, 2009, and the change of the laws, the Dodd-Frank law. And one of the changes that was made when they had the financial crisis and collapse of a lot of the institutions was that the U.S. government decided they were going to fine the correspondent banks on the size of the bank and no longer on the size of the infraction. When those correspondent banks did an audit of the respondent banks here, they realized they were not very good at doing what they're supposed to do, and that they were not making money. So they decided to pull out. But the US government recognized that if they did that, it would increase the security risk. Because currently 85% of our bank transactions are electronic. You know where they're going. If you drop the correspondent banks, what happened in Belize, where we become cash, you're almost creating a guaranteed environment for corruption and for money laundering. So it has nothing to do with CIP, what initially took place. But what's happening is those banks are continuously evaluating the risk. So when they're looking at this thing and they're seeing what is taking place in Dominica, they saw what's taking place in St. Kitts, what took place in Antigua, what took place in Grenada, what's taking place now in St. Lucia. And they're hearing about underselling, and then when they look at the ability of these institutions to monitor themselves and to regulate themselves, it's very weak. So the banks are the ones that are going to be, the correspondent banks are the ones that are going to be exposed. They don't have time for this. So you heard what happened in Dominica. Literally all the correspondent banks have left, and there's only one left, Bank of America. And Bank of America now has come out and said, we don't want to deal with CIP. So if you're a local agent law firm and you're dealing with CIP, don't bank with us. Don't send your money through our systems. And we're seeing the same thing taking place now in St. Lucia.
During your appearance on this same program, Newsmaker Live, on August the 28th of 2024, and this was done via Zoom because you were in Washington, because you and your deputy political leader met with Mr. Martinez of MSR Media. And I remember you saying that you saw some of the incriminating evidence. We're talking about 2 months now, and what have you done with that so-called evidence that you got from him?
I've obtained the evidence, and the evidence is going to be part of my court case. So when we file our court case, we'll be filing some of the evidence, because my court case more than likely will go in 2 parts, although my lawyers are discussing whether they do it holistically. So one is to deal with the legality of the infrastructure program, and the other one's to deal with the underselling. So a lot of the evidence that I saw, one, shows that there was underselling and that the government knew that there was that level of underselling. The information that I saw confirmed that the Prime Minister of this country knows everything that's taken place. That Claude Emmanuel went to Washington, D.C. through his permission. That he was briefing the Prime Minister all along. The evidence shows that the lawyer that was hired to represent Claude Emmanuel, remember the Prime Minister said that Claude Emmanuel is a big boy, he can take care of himself. Well, he's not taking care of himself.
But the Prime Minister revealed that his legal fees are being paid by the unit.
Which is our money,
yes,
the taxpayers' money. Yes? Now, so it means that the lawyer is working for the state. And there's evidence to show that the lawyers have been discussing things with MSR in consultation with the Prime Minister. So the Prime Minister knows everything and is approving everything. So when the offer was made to settle the case, right, they went back to the Prime Minister to get his input. Now, the Prime Minister has denied that. The Prime Minister has skirted around the details of that and basically saying, I'm not involved. I don't know what's going on, right? Does the Prime Minister know that Laurent Theophilus has resigned and why he's resigned? We know that when the chairman resigns from the unit, he has to write, according to the act, to the minister. When people ask the minister whether the chairman has resigned, he said, I don't know. Right? We saw that the audit documents that were presented in the House, that instead of Laurent Theophilus as the chairman signing, it was the deputy chair, Julian Charles, who signed it. I heard tapes of conversations of which other ministers are putting the blame and the responsibility squarely on the shoulders of the Prime Minister and Ernest Hilaire, meaning they don't know what's going on. They're just hearing in the periphery what's taking place. We're hearing that the infrastructure program is not being run out of the Ministry of Infrastructure. It's being run out of the Prime Minister's office in the Ministry of Economic Development, which I have said, the PS of Economic Development is Paul Hilaire, Ernest Hilaire's brother. And we start tying all these things together, and it really is unnerving, it's unsettling, and it smells of corruption. And so all of that evidence is there. So I was really happy when I heard Rick Wayne say that he's also now seen that evidence, and it's damning, right? You cannot argue what is in paper and what is on audio, right? And the story that it tells, and it confirms that there's something wrong. As they say, something smells wrong in Rotterdam, okay? It's not good. And I think that when you speak to people in St. Lucia, Tim, everybody gets that sense that something is wrong. Not everybody has taken the time or will ever understand the absolute nuances of what's taking place. But clearly, everybody can see for themselves there's something wrong. How can it be this amount of money that's being spoken about, and the promise that this money is going to translate into something good for the people of St. Lucia, yet there's no evidence of what that good is? But you have a Prime Minister who denies any knowledge of it.
But you say that people have a sense that something is wrong. But you had the number of people turning out yesterday outside Parliament, and definitely does not reflect what you're saying in terms of people knowing that something is definitely wrong with regard to the citizenship by investment program. And again, based on the number of people who would have turned out to protest.
One has nothing to do with the other. That was not an official protest by the United Workers' Party. I and members of my party have said to people, no one can deny your right to show up in Parliament and to protest. If we were going to do a proper protest, Tim, I would have to seek permission. I would have to do a whole bunch of different things. The party was not involved in this. It was individuals who took it upon themselves to show up. Nothing else. I'm hoping that more and more solutions are going to take it upon themselves based on what they're seeing with healthcare, what they're seeing with crime, what they're seeing with the CIP, what they're seeing with the mismanagement of infrastructure and the level of corruption that's taking place in this country, that it's time for individually for all of us to stand up. Individually. And I'm hoping that these kinds of protests are going to grow in the numbers as well as the number of people who are attending them.
As we swerve to another troubling area, and that is healthcare, you certainly would have faced your fair share of problems in dealing with the nation's health situation, particularly moving from what was the Victoria Hospital to the OKEU. And we had a lot of people complaining that for example, the transition was not as smooth as it should have been. Why do you think that we continue to grapple with this issue of proper provision of healthcare to the people of St. Lucia, irrespective of which party is leading the government? And one must admit that according to the St. Lucia Medical and Dental Association, what is happening now is unprecedented on a higher scale, but we've always had problems with providing quality healthcare to the citizens of the country.
So I would not accept your analogy that it was not smooth. I think that the Ministry of Health, the staff, the private doctors, everyone were really applauded for the transition from Victoria to OKEU. And it was in the middle of COVID. We were forced into OKEU. And the problem with going into OKEU, and why it did not take place earlier, is you had to fix the financial problems. How we were running health in this country was not sustainable. So I remember going to Victoria. 85% of the cost of Victoria, and the money that the government was providing, was for salaries and for utility charges, not for the operation. We were trying to operate it on 15%. The next problem you had is that really the permanent secretary and the chief medical officer really became the CEO collectively of the hospital. That's not what their training was about. And they became the CEOs because of money, because everybody was going to them literally every day because it was a shortfall. Now,
isn't that what this government is facing right now as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why we spent 3 years leading up to COVID. And remember, I said it was going to take 3 years to start fixing things. You don't go in to the Ministry of Health and change habits overnight. And it was a big fight. We had hours and hours and hours and hours of meetings with 50, 60 people in cabinet room from all different aspects, looking at how we were going to fund healthcare. Finally, it was healthcare insurance was the best way to do it. We talked about doing it through NIC. We spoke about a whole bunch of other different mechanisms that we could have used to fund healthcare. The insurance premium was going to be about 1,000 EC dollars per year. Persons that were making over a certain salary would be like the NIC, and you would share it. So you would pay $500 a year as your contribution. DBS or your employer would pay the other $500. Maybe DBS is a bit more generous and they pay $600 and you pay $400. Mm-hmm. The government would have paid the contribution for all those pensioners that were earning pensions below a certain amount of money, couldn't afford to do it. We would have paid it for the single mothers who were unemployed. We would have paid it for them and for their kids. We would have paid it for people who were unemployed. We would have paid it for civil servants under a particular pay grade. The government would have paid the entire amount. But it would be paid. That money would have gone into a separate fund, not the consolidated account, to be used to pay back the insurance. So if you go to one of the healthcare services, you put in your application for payment as an insurance scheme, and then that's when the money is drawn down. And why is that important? It's because there's a paper trail, and it shows what services you got, and there was a fixed price for those services. So we know what was going on. You would have had to have get a health check once a year. So we know what the health of the nation is. We know if policies are working. Now that people have health care insurance, it would have provided you with about $75,000 of value of healthcare services on a per annum basis. If you were had high blood pressure, it pays for your medication. So high blood pressure and
NCDs?
well, it's NCDs, but it's also diabetes, right? Are what we call lifestyle diseases. To change your diet, you have to exercise. But sometimes people need medication. Medication automatically reduces the risk. When you get to the point where you have to go and get dialysis, that's a huge strain on the family. Far less when you start getting amputated. When you have a stroke, that means that you're no longer earning income in your family. You're now becoming a burden to your family because somebody else normally is going to have to leave their job to be able to take care of you. So dealing with these issues urgently, and that's what healthcare insurance would have done, would have front loaded this money and allowed people now to have a solution to the problems that they had, right? So this government came in, ran away from that, and said to us they're going to provide universal health care. This is the same universal health care that when Dr. Anthony came into office in 1997 that he was promising. So from 1997 until to today, and after the Labour Party has been in for 4 terms, they still can't deliver it.
So, okay, so that begs the question, I mean, what is preventing the governments of St. Lucia from implementing universal health care? Because it appears that it's not as easily implemented as you are making it appear to seem.
No,
So
are you speaking of universal health care or universal health insurance?
Universal health care. Or universal health insurance, sorry.
Well, remember, there's a difference.
The insurance.
So,
the insurance aspect of it.
universal health care generally means that the government is going to pay it. Everything. Right? And that's the problem. Health is already the highest amount of money that the government spends on an annual basis. Around $150, $160 million a year. But it's not even close to being enough. Because as I said to you, that primarily pays for salaries and pays for utilities and some capital expenses.
But realizing that this is not sustainable,
yes.
why do you think governments have failed to find some kind of mechanisms of avenue whereby at least you could come with a significant amount of money to finance the provision of healthcare in St. Lucia so that it does not become a burden to the state?
So this is where I think that there is a misunderstanding by a lot of people as to what really is the financial status of the state. When we went into government, and you'll remember the very famous statement that Kenny Anthony said, something went wrong. What went wrong is that the gap between the cost of running the government and the money that the government was earning was increasing. And that was being exasperated because what was happening is that they were borrowing money to pay for their overdrafts. So the worst thing to do is to borrow money, okay, to pay for debt because you get no productivity gain from that, right? It's a very fast spiral. So what was happening is the debt was multiplying very fast. And it got to the point where the bank said, hey, I'm not going to lend you any more money because you're becoming more unviable every day. So the only types of borrowing that was available to the government was treasury bills, short-term financing at a higher expense rates. That's the first problem that we had to deal with in 2016. How do we fix that gap? We introduced an airport tax. We lowered the VAT rate from 15% to 12.5%. And we put on a gas tax of $1.50. So the $1.50 was to go towards fixing the roads because you had to fix the roads. If you couldn't fix the roads, you would not have the capacity to be able to grow in your economy. The airport tax achieved 2 things. One, it provided funding that would not affect the government's accounts for the airport. So the airport was being fully funded by mainly tourists because 85% of the airport tax is paid for by tourists. So it's only the St. Lucians who were traveling. By reducing the VAT rate, it encouraged more small businesses to be able to grow. Within 2 years, Tim, we saw that the revenue of the government of St. Lucia went up, and we were able to maintain the existing costs that we had. So we reduced the gap to zero. Very important. But even when you reduced it to zero, Victoria Hospital was costing $35 million a year to operate. And it was not being operated well. Do we agree with that?
Yes.
Not well at all. Okay? You're now moving into a brand new hospital. Air conditioning, no windows, mechanical beds, not the what do you call it, mechanical beds. So you had the electronic beds. Everything became more expensive. University of West Indies estimated that the cost of operations of OKE would be $75 million a year. So the $35 million by closing Victoria means you have to find another $40 million. Okay? Where were you going to get that money from? So until you can grow the economy and grow your tax base, that was going to be very difficult. I repeatedly said, I don't believe it's going to be $75 million. I think it's going to be much more than $75 million. And I think that that's what this government is finding out. They went in there, they discarded all the information, all the people that we had that were proper administrators, Siobhan, a whole bunch of them, got rid of them. They got rid of Cayman Health City. They complained about how much money they were paying Cayman Health City. You were paying Cayman Health City because they've been there. They've run hospitals. The Indians run the most efficient hospitals. They provide high quality service at most affordable prices. And they were introducing processes and management styles to help improve the quality of the service that we were providing, as well as to make it more cost efficient. They threw all that out. You brought in a board who believed that they know everything. Okay? There's a particular doctor inside there who's the deputy. She was leading the marches when we were in government. Now she's on the board, and she's micromanaging the place. She's become a terror inside there, and many people we've seen have left.
Yes, but shouldn't we treat that as hearsay instead of identify any one individual? What you have is a board that is managing the affairs of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, and to be fair to the board, the resources at its disposal would be limited, and you just made reference to that early on in terms of the finances that the government has at its disposal to run the operations of that particular health institution. So the only thing that's one of the areas that is basically impeding the work of the board.
No. So it would be my prerogative to tell you that that's not true, because what they did is they played politics with it. So rather than looking at the work program that was done and understand what is it we were attempting to do to make it self-sustaining, right? They played politics and they went in an opposite direction. It's no different with St. Jude's. What was the rationale for going back into the old building? There's no explanation that can justify what this government is doing. You had a brand new building that was purpose-built, Tim, purpose-built to be a hospital. And it was going to be two hospitals. Local hospital downstairs, 110,000 square feet, and an international hospital upstairs. And that both hospitals would have shared all of the operating facilities. Your MRI, your X-ray machines, your labs, your maintenance, etc. So it means that the local hospital, which is being funded by the local government, that would have generated additional revenue because of what was happening upstairs. We'd have taken the old building and made it into a university. So it wasn't about demolishing the old building. It's just you could look at the building. So as a layman, you could see there was a problem. We didn't take that approach. We went and hired professionals, right? A proper engineering firm who brought expertise in from the medical fields, who did an analysis and showed that it was going to cost in excess of $200 million to fix it. That number has come to pass. The government today wants to borrow $265 million to go and fix an old building. It's 3.5 years that have gone by. They can't fix it. Meanwhile, the new building is sitting there. And to add insult on injury, that the contractor who was given the contract has all Indian workers. Again, the question is, who gave all those persons work permits to be in St. Lucia, and why? When they were building the other building, the modern building, it was all St. Lucian workers, 100%. So why is it now that 100% of the workers have to be foreigners? Why? Why is it after 3.5 years they cannot finish the hospital? And we are the ones going to pay the price. Who is going to pay back the $265 million? These are burning questions. So that I'm saying to you, Tim, the board has to play and take a lot of responsibility as to what's taking place. And when you listen to some of the people who have exited there, a lot of them are blaming it on the micromanagement of the board. The board's not listening. It's a bunch of doctors on the board who seem to think that they know better than everybody else. The same things that the Prime Minister wanted to accuse me of in saying that I was doing, okay, of which he has no proof. He's turning around and doing the same thing. And it's coming at our expense, because today, OKEU is a disaster, and we all have a price to pay for what's taking place.
What we'll do is we'll put the telephone number on screen so that you can take your calls. For my guest, once again, former Prime Minister of St. Lucia, is currently the leader of the parliamentary opposition and is also the MP for Micoud South. As we continue to discuss a range of issues, we started with a focus on the report that was presented by the CIP Minister, Dr. Ernest Hilaire, yesterday in the Islands Parliament. That is for the period 2022 to 2023. So we take your calls right now. I don't know if we already have in some calls. Yes, we have our first call online. As we say, hello, good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Could I make a contribution?
Good evening to you, caller. Go ahead with your contribution, please.
Chef.
Okay. We continue to take your calls. Let's take another call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening, Tim. How are you doing?
Hi, good evening to you, caller. Go ahead with your contribution, please, caller.
Yeah. Tim, I want to make a contribution on regards to our healthcare situation in St. Lucia. In the healthcare situation in St. Lucia, the healthcare situation in St. Lucia is a total disaster. And the leader of the opposition is correct when he said the plans that he had for healthcare was on point. The health insurance coverage for each and every St. Lucian, up to 75,000 in coverage. That would have prevented the situation of the little girl who got shot in her mouth. By now, her mother will not have to be going on social media begging for assistance from this government, only to be told or only to be turned away. When you have situations, Tim, at the OKEU where the electricity went off and a police officer was undergoing surgery, had to die because this Labour Party government does not see the need.
Well, caller, we don't know that led to the death of the police officer in question. Let's be very careful. A postmortem will determine the cause of death.
But Tim, the health situation in St. Lucia, the healthcare situation in St. Lucia is a mess. When you're telling me you go to the emergency department at the OKEU or at St. Jude, and persons have to wait hours to see sometimes days, or some persons have to be on the floor, literally be on the floor, and there's no medication, no beds. They have to bring their own bed sheets while this Labour Party government continues to squander and waste money on ridiculous things. This tells you that this Labour Party government is careless. They don't care, and all they want to do is to protect the victory at all costs. And I'm saying to St. Lucians, let us wake up. Let us see that this Labour Party government does not care. We're only there to provide jobs for themselves and their friends, and we have to take back our country, and we have to save St. Lucia. And the only option we have right now, the only viable political choice we have right now, is the United Workers' Party, and this man there, right there, the leader of the opposition, Alan Huxley, to rescue St. Lucia and bring back respect and dignity to our country, St. Lucia. Have a blessed night.
Thank you so much for calling.
You know, one of the things may I?
Yeah, hold on. Do you have another call? Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening. Good evening, Tim. Good evening, Mr. Sharpnick.
Good evening to you, caller.
Yes, the National Trust, the way you treated them so far, do you have any regrets? And do you admit that the way you treated them was wrong?
Thank you so much.
So I want to really deal with the previous caller, and what he's really referring to is the situation at OKEU, which is being made worse by what I call the Castries crisis. The Castries crisis is because Leclerc Healthcare Center is literally dysfunctional. The Chaussee Health Center is closed, been closed for a while. The Marsha Healthcare Center is closed, and Entrepot is only open on a part-time basis. So here it is, you have the Prime Minister who is from Castries East, you have the Deputy Prime Minister who's from Castries South, you have the Senior Minister who is from Castries North, and you have the want-to-be Prime Minister from Castries Central. That's seniority plus. It is their constituents that are feeling the impact, because what's happened, Tim, is they have no other place to go to but where? OKEU. And OKEU cannot even handle what it's supposed to be handling. And this is why you're now starting to see the long lines of people sitting in chairs, waiting to try to get a bed, because there are persons who don't need to go to OKEU, but have nowhere else to go. And this is why I said in Parliament, when I was in government, and because of the climate change and the number of storms that we were having, I was able to convince the US government to give us what's called a field hospital. Are you familiar with the field hospital? So after the elections, about maybe 2 months afterwards, the US ambassador came here and they followed through on their promise, and they gave St. Lucia a field hospital. I think they actually opened it up, and it was on
Was it in the South?
They just put it display in the South.
Yeah.
Correct. And then they put it back into the box. I think that these guys forgot about it. So if I was in government, first of all, my government would not have found itself in the situation that OKE has found itself in, and with the Castries crisis that's taking place. But why can't they bring that field hospital to Castries, open it up somewhere, and give some relief to the problem? But you see, if you have no empathy, and when you don't have empathy, you don't then have a sense of urgency. Because if you empathize, you then now put yourself in the shoes of people. My daughter is choking, somebody gets cut with a knife, all kinds of things take place where you have to rush to the hospital, correct? When you empathize with people, it creates a sense of urgency. And that urgency drives creativity and becomes solution oriented. That's not what this government is doing.
You have a call. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening, Tim.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, okay. Can I make question based on the CIP?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. The minister responsible for the CIP made a number of damning statements in his presentation. Some of them being that in terms of Galaxy, all the procedures he already found in place, which was put by the last administration, namely yourself, Mr. Sharpney. I listened to most of it. I saw the presentation, but I did not, in your rebuttal, I did not get any impression that you refuted that. So I just want to find out, before I ask any further question, is what he's saying accurate insofar as all the procedures pertaining to Galaxy, the monies and everything being owned by Galaxy? And yeah.
So
Okay, caller, thank you, because time is against us. We can't take a
I'm really happy
follow-up.
that he answered the question, because I think that that's a presumption a lot of people have made, that when they heard him make the presentation in the House, that I was given an opportunity to rebut it. I wasn't. What he gave was called a minister's statement. He makes the statement by himself. There is no rebuttal, there's no questions, and even during the day, we're not allowed to bring up anything to address or ask him any questions. So I think it's something as important as this, Tim, that the minister should not have done it in the House. If he wanted to do it in the House, fine, But he should have also had a press conference where he could have repeated the statement and allowed members from the media and members from civil society to be there and to go through this thing thoroughly to satisfy everyone. But he took a safe environment. He controlled what he wanted to say, and he used semantics. So the short answer to your question is, I was not given an opportunity to rebut, and I don't agree with 90% of what the minister said, because it was not what he said, it's what he did not say. And we were left none the wiser at the end of the day. We don't know how many files have been allocated. We don't know how much money was put into the escrow account. We don't know how much money the hotel is costing. We don't know what infrastructure projects are being done. We don't know at Rock Hall. I don't know if you know, Tim, how many houses are being built.
No, he has not made
how much cost, how much is it going to cost? And yet they say they're on the verge of starting. And they put a tractor there to fool who? So you mean to tell me the tractor's ready to go, you're ready to go, and you still cannot tell us how many houses, how much it's going to cost, how many files did you give to BMAX? None of those questions were answered?
Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Good evening to you.
Hi, good evening to you, caller. Quick comment or question, caller?
Yes, sir. I would like to find out, because you told me when you get done with the solution, you give me all the information. You know, and I've been waiting for that information.
Yeah, what information?
And one more question, please. One more thing. You said that the healthcare in St. Lucia is poor. But I would like you all to go to America and see how, and England, to see how long you're going to see on a bench for the day. These are richer country than ours. And actually, there's a lot of money that is badly spent. I quite agree in St. Lucia. By you, Mr. Shasta, it happened because you give somebody $5 million, they give us $2.5 million back. Where is the other $2.5 million that could go into our healthcare?
Thank you so much.
Look, we've answered that question repeatedly. And if you really believe that the $2.5 million that has not come back yet, which the Prime Minister said that it's in a court case, in an escrow account, it's being held by the lawyers, and as soon as the case is completed, hopefully we get back our money. But I also want to repeat, one of the reasons why we trusted this individual to do this, the program with the vaccines, is because he has land in St. Lucia, and he does business in St. Lucia. And I can say to all St. Lucians, categorically, the gentleman's land is substantially more valuable than the $2.5 or $3 million EC that's still outstanding. But if this gentleman believes that the $2.5 million is what's causing financial pains to what's taking place in healthcare, then we can speak about the hundreds of millions of dollars that has disappeared. Hundreds of millions of dollars that are unaccounted for. $380 million US. Where is it? Why has it not been spent in St. Lucia? You're saying that you're going to have an infrastructure program of $100 million US, yet you've given Galaxy 7,000 files to sell. That's $700 million. Where is that money? Where's the $265 million that you've borrowed from the Saudi Arabians? How come that's not been spent? Why are you going to spend $300 million on a halls of justice? Where is the $80 million for the NLA? You know, one of the stories that came out today, Tim, that was very sad, was that they're canceling the sporting games for students. I don't know if you saw this story, about it, yeah. Right? The primary reason, in my opinion, is because the NLA took a loan of $80 million. We have no idea how that money's been spent. The repayment of that loan is $800,000 a month. That's money that would have been funding these kinds of programs, and instead it has been used to finance a loan that we have no idea who the contractors were and what was happening. And I kept on warning that this was coming. I didn't know it was going to happen this fast.
You have a call. Good evening to you, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello, good evening to you, caller. Okay, lost that call. Let's see if we get another call. Good evening to you. This is Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening to you, caller.
Tim, three quick points. Mr. Shafty talked about healthcare. 3 quick points. Mr. Shafty, one, you stopped St. Jude's for 3 years. Nothing happened. You did not commission OKEU for 3 years until COVID hit. That's when you commissioned OKEU. 3. You caused a contract to be signed with Cayman City for $25 million for transition from VH to OKEU. You know what that $25 million could do for OKEU right now?
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, go ahead.
Look, St. Jude's, it took a year and a half to do the audit. There was no point in spending money that we didn't know what the return was going to be. I thought we moved pretty fast to try to get the new structure. I think if it had not been for COVID that we would have completed it, but we'll never know. But the reality is that there is a building that is very advanced that was designed to be specifically a hospital. The old building could never be a hospital. In terms of OKEU, we brought in Cayman Health City not just to help us in transferring. And I, you know, this is where some of the persons who maybe are being influenced by the Labour Party and their narrative. When we were moving to OKEU, we had COVID. Where were we going to get help from? We initially were going to be getting help, if you don't remember, from Martinique. And there was a massive outbreak in Martinique, and we couldn't get those doctors. And we were trying to get the the Cuban doctors here. The people from Cayman Health City were not here only to help us in the transition. They were here to build a new healthcare system for St. Lucia, design it from the bottom, and also provide training. So wherever there was no solution that could fill the role, a person would be brought in, and then St. Lucians would be identified that we can send for training so they could replace them. So the money that we were spending was not just for transition, but was to build a brand new healthcare system. And it's because they have abandoned that structure that they are now finding themselves in this same mess they're in today.
We have a call. Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Yes, Tim, I called here and I asked a question to Mr. Chasney. He regretted how he treated the National Trust, and you totally ignored me. Is that how the program runs?
Mr. Peter Alexander, in the interest of time,
sir.
we cannot answer every question, sir. But we wouldn't want to answer this question from Mr. Alexander.
I've answered the question, and the question came up in the House. I've indicated that the National Trust is conflicted, Tim. The National Trust is a conservationist society, and that's what their board is made up of. People who want the conservation of buildings, conservation and protection of culture and history in St. Lucia. But at the same time, consecutive governments have given the National Trust assets. So one of the assets is Pigeon Island, another one is Fondor, another one is Maria Island, and there's assets they have up on the Mourne, the Derek Walcott home. National Trust has a difficulty in managing those assets for it to produce a return for them. And I believe that Sir John gave them those assets, not for the state to continue to funding the maintenance of those programs by them, but so that they could turn around and make money. I'm proud, sir, that I'm the one who started the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. I'm the one who identified Pigeon Island. And the Jazz Festival over the years has been a significant money earner for the National Trust. When I was Prime Minister, they were getting an allocation of $700,000, which was intended to be for capital expenditure, to invest. Okay? I repeatedly asked the National Trust, give me a plan. The plan that was submitted was to convert the museum in the back into a conference facility. That they were going to move their headquarters office to Pigeon Island, and they were going to put a little store at the front where the gate is. They had a feasibility done by Richard Peterkin's company, and the first page said, not feasible. Now that is before Harbor Club came with its boardrooms, Royal St. Lucia, the Royalton Hotel with its conference facilities. They would not have been able to compete. We spoke specifically, can we look at how much money that the tourist board has spent in putting on the jazz festivals and festivals over the last 20 years? It's in excess of $25 million. So imagine if the tourist board had actually spent that money on building facilities on Pigeon Island, how much better off everybody would be. We said we have a great opportunity. We've seen now that Pigeon Island is a marquee attraction for any major event. I don't think that there's a place in the Caribbean that is as beautiful to host a musical festival than Pigeon Island. So imagine if we could put up a permanent stage and have nightly shows, musical shows, theatrical shows. So it means that our young persons can get a permanent job in the arts, whether it's in dance, whether it's in musical, or whether it's in plays. When you have your friends who come to St. Lucia, where do you take them? What cultural experience do we have that we can take them? Imagine that one of the major attractions would be going to the different shows at Pigeon Island. That would be a dinner show. You design the stage so that when you now want to do a major festival, it's much easier to be able to expand it. We showed the National Trust that they could make money in doing that. The board doesn't want to go in that direction. That's fine. And all I'm saying, I have no regrets of anything, is to say to the National Trust, this is taxpayers' money. So yesterday or 2 days ago, what did we do? We have agreed to waive the VAT for National Trust. So National Trust doesn't have to pay VAT anymore. That's taxpayers' money. That's money that's supposed to be going to help with the healthcare, help with education, and help with everything else. Do you really believe, I certainly don't, that the government has had any kind of dialogue with the National Trust as to how that's going to benefit them? Are we seeing any major improvements in the National Trust? Are we seeing that they are adding value to what we're doing? So that's my concern. Okay, I feel that as a Minister of Finance and as the Prime Minister, my job was to make sure that every government ministry and every statutory agency was delivering to the people of this country the best value at the best price. Because when you don't allow that to happen, it means that somebody else is suffering. And when we know, we're discussing it here tonight, there's a significant shortfall of monies for healthcare. So when they don't have the stadium, when they don't have the theater, look at the numbers of jobs that have been lost, Tim, of young people over the years. Right now, the National Trust is the only place in St. Lucia that has a private beach that you have to pay to go to. Oh, can we genuinely say that we're seeing a benefit? Has National Trust even earned enough money to restore some of the old buildings that are there? When I went to the Mourne the other day, it was a shame to see where it had gotten to. But persons are going to turn around and say, no, Alan Chasney caused that. No, it's not Alan Chasney caused that. We must resolve this conflict between the board and the management of the trust and what the government wants to see and what the expectations the government had for the National Trust.
Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hi, good night, Tim.
Good evening to you, caller.
And good evening to the leader of the opposition.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Leader of the opposition, there is an allegation that has been leveled at you for some time now, and I don't think I am not sure you ever give an explanation to that allegation. That is, you traveled to the UK and you spent about £2,000 a night in that hotel. And I think for about a whole week or something like that. Is it true? Have you ever really given an explanation on that?
Okay, caller, thanks.
I've never really had to give an explanation on that because the Prime Minister has only made the allegation. And I've continuously said to the Prime Minister, if he thinks that that's actually true and there are facts to put it out. And he cannot.
Why?
Because there's an absolute explanation of what took place there. Is my family joined me, I got a bigger room, and I paid the difference. Okay, so you get an allocation that you can spend per night on a room. Mm-hmm. I deducted that, I paid the difference. So that's why he can't provide anything. Okay, and it was not for 7 nights. So, I want us to start really getting to the point where the government needs to provide the evidence of some of the allegations. They made allegations that there was corruption at St. Jude's. They've not been able to prove anything. They made allegations that there was corruption at HIA. They have not been able to provide any evidence. They said there was corruption at the Rodney Bay Highway. Nothing. They said that there was corruption at Tavern and Shock. Nothing. They said there was corruption on the vaccine money. Nothing. All the money is there. The approval processes. All I did was to sign a direct award. And a direct award, it comes by the recommendation of the Ministry of Finance and also the Ministry of Health because of the urgency of the matter. All the due diligence was done by those persons. But up to now, 3.5 years into it, all the corruption that this government made against my government, not one thing have they been able to provide. Whereas they're not even out of government, and we have the evidence of substantial amounts of corruption that's taken place in this government, and we have provided the evidence for people to see it for themselves.
Final comments from you, Mr. Shastri?
I want to say to all St. Lucians that this country is on the brink of collapse. There's no doubt about it. When we look at what's going on in healthcare in our country, the crisis, the Castries crisis, as I call it, the deterioration of healthcare centers, the lack of any medicine, personnel, experienced personnel are leaving. Now they're talking about bringing more Cuban doctors and nurses to St. Lucia to make up that shortfall. That's only a patch job for something that is a fundamental right for all of us as St. Lucians. National security is a disaster. We have 3 ministers that can't seem to get out of their own way in resolving the issue. The murder rate continues to go up, but what is not being recognized is the amount of other types of crime that are taking place, the robberies, the assaults, and rapes that are taking place in this country that are not being reported. So nothing that this government has done in any way we believe is going to resolve the problem. You have a new acting commissioner for 6 months. What is somebody going to do really in 6 months? That's not the kind of solution that St. Lucians are looking for. The cost of living. The government continues to ignore the fact that they are the contributors to the increase in unabated control and increase of cost of living in this country. We told them not to put on the 2.5% levy for health and security. We obviously see that money has not gone into health and security. That has been a revenue stream for the government. And what is more painful and ought to be more egregious for all St. Lucians is that a businessman was able to convince the government that he could not proceed with his investment if the 2.5% levy was not waived. And the government did it. And they attempted to hide it from us. So all of the other persons that are struggling and have been asked to make a sacrifice, your voice doesn't matter. This government is repeatedly saying that to you. Keeping the price of gas at $16.50 when a barrel of oil has dropped to the extent that it is, and the impact that high price is having on small businesses and other costs. Cost of electricity has not come down in this country. We're now seeing that our water, WASCO, is in crisis itself. Nobody's talking about it, but every time that there is a cutoff, every time we see work taking place and people are suffering, there is no recourse for this mismanagement of our country by this government. This is why we believe the time has come that St. Lucians need to stand up. We need to right the wrong. This cannot continue. And I applaud the individuals that came out to Parliament on Tuesday. I'm hoping that at the next Parliament sitting, more individual citizens choose to come out and show this government that they're dissatisfied. You heard the Prime Minister laughing at the number of people that were there rather than being concerned that anybody would want to come and show up and disagree with what he's doing and not provide answers. The CIP continues to be a mitigated disaster and a haven of corruption. Significant resources that are going unaccounted for, all in the name of a government that says we are going to do something but have yet to do nothing. And what they want to do is to convince you that the leader of the opposition and United Workers' Party is against progress. We're not. What we want to hold them to is accountability. That is what we must focus our efforts on. We're seeing what just took place with the young people in canceling their sport programs. Do you know how many young kids were looking forward and look forward to participating in the games in their schools, in their different houses? And yet we don't have any reason from the government. There's suggestions that they overspent money on Julian Alfred, but I think it's deeper than that. I think the fact that this government went and borrowed $80 million and is using the money from the NLA, $800,000 a month for the next 15 years, is coming out of the National Lottery Association to pay for this loan. That's $800,000 a month that could have paid for how many different games, could have sponsored how many different scholarships. This is why we're saying that this country is on a brink of disaster. We have the GPH deal that's unexplained. We have the Bonanza deal that's unexplained. We have the halls of justice that's unexplained. We have the HIA, which remains unexplained. We have St. Jude's Hospital that remains unexplained. We have the cost overruns on the Millennium Highway and the West Coast Road that remain unexplained. My appeal to all solutions tonight: United Workers' Party is ready. We've already announced 7 of our candidates. Before the end of the year, hopefully we'll announce another 3, and before in early next year, all 17 of our candidates would be ready and to go. We are ready to govern this country. We did it in the past. We will do it again. We've learned. We're going to listen. We're going to make sure that we're going to make St. Lucia a place that you want to live, work, and for visitors to come and visit St. Lucia to the benefit of all St. Lucians. So I thank you, Tim, for this opportunity tonight. But I want all St. Lucians to stay strong. And as I said, it's time for us to right the wrong.
Thank you so much for being my guest on this evening's Newsmaker Live. Once again, the leader of the opposition and MP for Mico South, Mr. Alan Chastanet. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked.
And he really up here like, what is his legs at? This boy ain't got no legs. Won't go to church, but come up here with no legs. What?
What are you doing up here with this sign?
Wounded at the war. Both legs gone. Anything
Grandma, what are you
help.
doing here?
God, look at his legs at. This boy sitting on here.
About how your grandma look?
Grandma, this is ridiculous.
And you got left on that. These people think there's no money about bread, milk. And you up here begging? I didn't even get
What a cup?
Well, you ain't gonna get that.
What a cup? He's a runner. He's a track star.
Once again, thank you so much for watching and listening to another edition of Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Polio. Good night and see you next time.
I, Philip Joseph here.
I would like to be judged as being the Prime Minister, not being judged as being part of a government.
Came into government that we had a manifesto and a vision and mission that had been approved by my party, by the highest body.
Basel 11 has not been in existence. 50 was...
Giant getting bazooka. You spraying big on to knock out mosquitoes.
I have never had a joint account with anybody in my life. Not my ex-wife, not my children, nobody. And I will refer that to the privileges committee.
What about the culture of people getting into office and not being effective?
What people become Prime Minister of St. Lucia have been the most ready.
Let's do it this Wednesday, because if it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live.